And hello, everybody. Hope you hear me. This is yet another Netgen Layouts webinar. We will now start sharing some slides and continue with our topic today. Just a second. Okay. So, our topic for today is the new version 0.11 of Netgen Layouts, which will be tagged very soon in a matter of days. So I will be showing you something really fresh. Okay, a few things about me. I'm Ivo, co-founder of Netgen. We are implementing working on the layouts product. We are from Croatia. We have a lot of experience in complex web solutions using Easy CMS from 2004 and Symfony PHP framework from 2013, etc., etc. We mostly work across Europe and as an agency, but we are also trying to be a technology provider to others via our open source efforts and also layouts. So that's briefly almost what I wanted to say about us. One more thing is, of course, the Web Summer Camp that we organize every year. It's, you know, the tickets sale started a few months ago. We just released all or most of the speakers for the event a couple of days ago, so definitely check it out. And maybe we see you at Rovinj in Croatia this year. So briefly about previous webinars, because this is this topic is about the new things coming from the 0.11 release. But if you want to learn more about other features, I very recommend you to check our other webinars about this. So check out the version 0.8 showcase from last year, and then 0.9 as well, then the architecture in general with the news in 0.10, and we also shared some case studies earlier this year. And today we'll talk about 0.11. So it's you know, every few months we have a new release. Check them out on our YouTube channel. Okay, so back to the topic. The topic is Netgen Layouts version 0.11, but just to brief everybody who is maybe not quite in line with what layouts is. I have 3 slides very briefly about what is layouts and why layouts. So when we try to explain to people why are we doing and what we are doing, we will try to summarize it in a couple of sentences. So this is the most recent slide I made. So why we are doing layouts? We want to offer a productivity tool that is primarily used for two things. So one is making the website building quicker, obviously. Of course, this probably is not suitable for one-pagers and very simple sites. It's mostly for more complex sites. So it could also be quicker in terms of if you have a multi-site. So if you have a design system in place and you want to quicker build similar sites and things like that, then definitely this tool is something that can help you. But the main and most important thing is it's not just about making it quicker and easier to build, it's also doing that while not losing all the flexibility for customizations and extensions and integration. So that's what our main concern is, making it simple to use but not lose the flexibility. And the other use case or the other step in the process is once you have this site, you want to operate it and maintain it with less cost. That's one of the key and most important things about layouts, is that you can use it to make iterative changes and changes that come along the way in a easier way, maybe even without any need of coding and things like that. So what is layouts in general? We are brave enough to have an acronym for that. So we call it Layouts and Block Management System, or LBMS. And what is, if you want to define this system, I would say it's a single page building. How do you make a landing page or a home page, but also how you build this whole site. So not just home pages, but also article pages, product pages, search pages, and things like that. And what layouts does is it renders the web page based on a layout which is managed by some site builder or site maintainer. It's also extensively customizable, and it's based on Symfony PHP framework. And how is layouts different from similar or other tools which are used for building sites? It's intended, as I already said, for custom and complex projects. It's not for very simple, straightforward one-pagers. It can control all website pages, not just landing pages or home pages. It's not WYSIWYG, as you will see in the demo. And it's backend agnostic, so you can actually hook it up to different kind of backends or multiple backends. Okay, so let's check out what's in the new version. If you want to learn about the core features, check out other webinars and also the website and page dedicated to layouts. Regarding the new version, I will showcase some of the features and maybe remind you of the related capabilities of layouts, but I will not go into all features. We have basically 4 groups of improvements. One is about how you schedule the block items. The other thing is introducing 2 new layout mapping conditions. We also have the new mode for changing the layout type. And we have various UX improvements which we will go through. So let's check out what is this thing we call scheduled block items. So the block items itself is about a piece of content coming from a CMS or maybe a product from an e-commerce system that you place into a block. So this is an entity we have. And the idea now is that we can manually set a time period when this block item is visible. So that's one of the most important improvements with it. While we were doing this feature, we also made it possible to hide the block item completely in the layouts itself. Of course, what's actually happening is that the CMS itself could hide some content item, and layouts can respect that. If the integration is done properly, the layouts will know that the item is actually hidden, and it will inform the user. And then we also have a way to programmatically hide or unhide block items on a developer level. So this might happen if there is a need for, depending on some external circumstances, to hide or unhide a block item. So this is also possible. And while we were doing this feature, we actually also improved the whole block item collection feature as well. And let me show you this right away. So let's go to, just a second. Let's go to share the screen of the demo. So, okay, let me just get a step back. So we are now looking at the demo site of ours and looking at the layout management part. And what I want to show you is in the home layout, which is used for the home page. We have certain blocks. In particularly, I would check this block out. So this is a grid with, let's say, 6 latest news. And if you look at the right side, you will see these properties of this block. And beside the design related properties, we also have content related properties. So this is hooked into a easy publish CMS system. So it integrates with the easy publish CMS. So what we have here is a defined collection type, dynamic collection. And by default, there is only one kind of query which is used for fetching the items. And in our case, it's only easy publish, so it's not shown. But we are now using the easy publish query. And this query has this amount of parameters. So we say that we want items from the news parent location. We want to sort it, publish, descending. We also fetching on the main locations. And we can also use some other parameters. But this is more or less enough. We also have a 6 limit, page limit, 6. And this is what is the result of this query. You see 6 items because we want to show 6 items. What happens is actually the query fetched only 4. And this is because we added 2 manual ones. So if I want to remove this manual one, of course I can do that. But then I will still have 6 items, but there will be a new one which is fetched dynamically. We can also rearrange these manual ones, which we added manually. So if I want, for example, to have this item on a second slot, I can move them in there. The other dynamic items will be placed accordingly around the manual. And this is a bit improved from the earlier versions because we have more actions around the item itself. So previously we only had a remove function for each block, a manual block item. What we now have is few more things. So one of the things is the link to actually opening this item in the CMS, which is quite handy. So we can easily click on it and go to an edited item in the CMS in another tab. What we also have is, of course, remove. Then we have the set position. This is quite interesting because not of course if you have only a couple of items, but there are some use cases where you have a lot of items. For example, if you have a slider or Ajax grid which can load more, so it could be 30, 40, 50 items, or if it's an image slider, so you could have 100 images or something like that. So in the case, if you want to have some manual items, it could be some more prominent content, or it could be an ad or something like that. You can place it to a position, so you can place it to a 100 position or a 50th position and things like that. This could be really handy in these use cases. So for example, in my use case, I could put this item on a 10th position. What happens here, I don't see it anymore here in the main list because the limit is 6, but I can see there is something there, and I can see that I actually placed a manual item in the 10th position. So I can also bring it back to 3rd, for example. So the control of where the item is placed is of course easier to do than in the earlier versions. Of course, yeah, this is a typical technical thing to do. So I placed it on the third place, but it's actually the fourth one because the first is not one, but it's 0. We might change this before releasing it to make it a bit easier to less technical people. Okay, and then this was about these improvements that we did on collection. So now back to the main feature that we did. So we have now a configure visibility model window. So what happens here is it first it will warn the user if this item is hidden in some other way. Maybe programmatically or from the CMS. In our case, this is not that, but it's visible by default. What we can do is we can hide it completely. So what happens now is that I still see this item in the list. I can see it's hidden in layouts. Otherwise, it could be hidden in CMS or it could be hidden programmatically or something like that. So the dynamic item is actually overriding this hidden item. So you don't see this item in the block anymore. The block only sees what it gets from the collection, what's the result of the collection. It doesn't see the hidden items. So you still see it's there, but it's actually not used, and it's overridden by the dynamic item. The dynamic item, you cannot do much with it because it's dynamic, so you can basically just edit it. You cannot remove it. So what will happen now is I will do another. The most important feature that we implement is we can schedule the visibility. So this is useful for in several use cases, but most importantly in editorial kind of use cases where you really need to push some important news at a specific time or in a specific time frame. So in our case, we can schedule this to be visible in let's say tomorrow at 2 p.m. Exactly. Okay. So this is one, and of course I want to have it only till Sunday, 2 p.m. So this is now very easy to do. This doesn't mean that the item or the page itself, the page where this item is pointing to, is hidden. So this is something that is or needs to be managed in the CMS itself. This is just about, does this block item is visible in this collection and in this grid or not? That's the most important thing. So what happens now is that I now see that the item is actually scheduled, and it's hidden. Still, it's hidden because I set the date in the future. So if I pull this back and start from Friday, I will actually see the item now, but at some point it will be hidden, or and Sunday 2 p.m. it will be hidden. And this is how scheduling works. One very important note, and this is what we have also here as a warning, is that the scheduling and is something hidden or not is very much depending on the caching of the page itself. So if the page itself is cached for a long period of time, then you might not see the change because it's cached. So what we recommend is when you have kind of scheduled item, or if you scheduled an item, you should configure some cache on that block, which is more appropriate for this. So, for example, if you want to change something, so the visibility on Sunday 2 p.m., so it would be reasonable that you put this block to be cached independently. So, for example, for let's say 1 hour or something like that. So in that error, with this error of 1 hour, the cache will expire. So the item will show up somewhere between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. So if you want more precision, you need to lower the TTL, but you still need to worry about the overall speed of the site. So some cache is still needed. We might in future implement to make this more automatic, so that we have a service that checks these scheduling and then clears the caches. But so far, we don't have that. Okay, so that was about the collections. The other improvements are 2 layout mapping conditions. So very simple. Again, some time-based mapping conditions. So are showing layouts in a specified time frame. And the other condition is a very interesting one, maybe not very used or should not be used very often, but sometimes it gets really handy. It's about error code condition. So let's check this out in the demo so that you understand better what I'm talking about. So let's go back and check out the mappings page. So again, I will not go into details what is mappings. Check this out on other webinars. Just want to emphasize these 2 new mappings. So when I'm creating a new mapping, and mapping is about how you define which layout will be shown for which URLs under which conditions. That's basically in a nutshell. So what we added is, besides other conditions, we added a HTTP error code condition and time condition. So the HTTP error code, for some reason, if you need this, you can easily set a condition so that if the page itself is maybe not acceptable or it's forbidden, for example, that you show a different layout based on that. So a use case could be you have a layout for someone who is logged in, and then you want to show a layout for someone who is accessing a page which is forbidden to him. So you probably want to show him some login screen or some other options, or just inform him that he cannot access the page. So it's a bit nicer way of handling user errors. Then the other condition is time. So again, this is not something that you will use very often, but it will get handy. For example, when you have Christmas and the client calls you and says, okay, I need some new block or something different, which is or which should be applied, let's say between December 23rd and let's say December 27th. So in this case, this would be applied in Christmas time. And of course, the same warning about caching still stands. So you need to think about the caching as well. So if the page is cached for a month, you might miss this scheduling. So the page should be, for example, cached maybe on a daily basis, so that you can catch this change in the mapping, so that a different mapping is used than the original. Of course, once you create this mapping, you need to place it somewhere above the original page. So in our case, if we want to put this on home, we would need to place this mapping above home, so that in that case, the new mapping, the new layout we want to show on home is overrides the default one. While in that time condition that you set. Okay, so that was about these new two mapping conditions. So let's again go back to the slides. So then we have the other big improvement, or then another big feature is change layout type. Similarly to other things that we were doing with this version, is it might not be always needed, but when you need it, it really comes handy. So so far, when you create a new layout, you need to set the layout type. You need to choose from the layout types you have in the system, and that was it. So you could create a layout with a lot of blocks, and then you would need, when you need to change the layout type, you would need to create it from scratch. And sometimes when you're building or maintaining the website, that you could lose half an hour just because you need to change a bit how the layout is shown on the page. Maybe you need to introduce a new zone or something like that. So we have a new mode where it's possible to change the layout type for an existing layout. And it's a simple drag and drop interface where you can quickly map the old zones to new zones. I will show it. And if you have a layout type with the same identifier, then those zones will be mapped automatically. So let me show you what I mean. So if we go back to the demo. So let's say I have a category travel layout, and it uses this layout, which has a right column more wider, and then we have a right column is narrower, and main column or the left column is more broad. So it's like this is a 2/3, and the right zone is 1/3. So for some reason, I want to change this layout to something else. So I go to this mode, change layout type. And similarly to when I want to create a new layout, I have the same option. So I can select which layout type I want to. So in this case, I want to select a new one. The funny thing is, it even makes sense to select the same layout type, because maybe you just want to rearrange quickly the blocks. If you have a lot of blocks, it will be easier to rearrange them if you want to just replace, for example, 5 blocks to one zone and 10 blocks to another zone. Of course, you can do it through the main interface, but with this, you can actually do it quicker. But in this use case, I will try to select a new layout type with less zones. So once I did that, I got to the interface where I can see that my header and my pre-footer and my footer were actually automatically mapped, because the old and the new layout type have the same identifier for these zones. Although I might not want to accept this, let's say, suggestion, so I can still remove it. So even though I have I have automatically suggested this pre-footer to go to the pre-footer. So this is the name in the old layout, and this here is the name in the new layout. So in this case, I removed the old pre-footer from the new pre-footer, which means that those blocks will not end up here. So here I see that I still have 3 zones from the existing or from the old layout that are not mapped to a new layout. So what I could do now is I could say, okay, my left zone I will place here in the main one. And with just one drag and drop, I can move the whole zone with all the blocks which are inside. What I could also say, okay, I had a right zone in the old layout, and I want to place it in the pre-footer. So I have it below. One important remark is that we distinguish the zones that are linked with the zones that are not linked. So if you see the red, this means that it's actually a linked zone to a shared layout. So there can only exist one linked zone to you can only link one old zone to a new linked zone. This is how layouts work, and so this might satisfy me. I will lose the pre-footer actually in this case. I don't need it, and if I'm happy with that, I can say apply. And what will happen is I will see the other layout. So the other layout type, I lost the zone that I don't need. And, but this is still not published. So I need to publish the layout to actually make this effect. So I will do that now, publish layout. And that's it. This is how you change the layout type. Should be very simple, especially if you have big layouts with a lot of blocks. Okay, so let's go quickly back to one more slide. The various UX improvements. Again, this is coming from the usage of the system, how we use it and how our partners use it and how our clients use it. So this is simple features, but might be very handy in everyday work. So for example, layout mappings, filtering by target type. I will show this later, very useful. Sorting of layouts as well, very useful. We also have now the restoring of the archived or the previously published version. So as you saw now, I was working on the draft, and once I published, the draft that I was working on became the published version, but the previously published version was archived. So we keep only one archived previously published version. So what we now have is you can also restore that archived version. We also have some lazy loading previews and things, which is mostly about making the performance of the content browser a bit faster. And very important as well in what was noticed while working with layouts is that sometimes things change maybe in the code. For example, you might change something in the development or staging versions, and you might change in the definition of layouts or blocks, which is in the code. So what happens is that you could push the code somewhere, and then on some instance you have some layouts or blocks in the database without the appropriate definitions in the code. So in that way, what we do is we now gracefully show those layouts and blocks, but we just say they are invalid because obviously there's something missing. There is a missing definition or missing piece of code. And we just say these layouts or blocks are invalid, and you can basically just remove them. That's it. Of course, if the code shows up again, they can still return in the previous state. So they are still there. They are just invalid, marked as invalid, and they will not be shown. The most important thing, however, is that it will not break the site or not break the page when it's rendered, because every invalid layout or block item is just skipped gracefully. This I will not be able to show now, but I think you got it. So what I will now show is quickly these first three. Before we go, just check a second to change my screen. So back to the demo. So the sorting of layouts. So the sorting of layouts is again simple but useful because you want to see when or what layouts were changed most recently. That's very useful. Of course, sorting by name, by layout type, and in certain cases you want to also see sorted by a number of mappings, or in the shared layouts use case you want to sort it by number of references in other layouts, so you can see easily that this right column block is not used anywhere because it doesn't have any reference. In this demo we don't have a lot of shared layouts, we don't have a lot of layouts, so it's still manageable without these filterings and sortings. But if you have 100 layouts, then this is very useful in everyday work. And for the layout mappings, we have filtering, and that's important because different layouts are used in different use cases. So, for example, very typical thing is I want to just show the mappings that are related to a single page. So it's not a number of URLs, just one page. In our case, it's usually one easy content or one easy location, and then you see those items, but we still respect the ordering, because ordering is for mappings is very important. So you can see actually there is some things missing here. The other use cases might be just to show things that are not content related. So you would want to see everything which is, for example, based on Symfony routes or request URIs or things like that. So then you see that it's only the default layout is applied like that. Or what you could also see is only undefined target. So this is also a use case where you want to see which mappings are actually not targeted to anything. So that's the other use case. Okay, and yeah, just one remark there. Whatever you choose here, it's also cached on the client. So when you return, it will use the same filter. Important to note is that once you go to reordering, it will actually show again everything, because it's very important to see everything in when you reorder. Okay, so let's see the one last thing. I think we were which layout we were changing the last. It was the category travel. You see, I found with sorting which one was changed. So this one for this one we changed the layout type. It had the right column before, now it doesn't. So I'm not happy with that. So the use case is okay. Let's just restore previously published version. And it says, "Are you sure?" And it gives me the date when this version was published, and I can restore it. And I'm back again with the right column, and I published that, and I'm back as before. That's basically it. What I wanted to show today. If you have any questions now, use the chat feature. Otherwise, you can of course always reach me on multiple channels. So I will wait a bit more if you have any chat on the chat feature that I can answer right now. Let's give 1 minute to everybody to think about a good question. Or any feedback, whatever you want to express. Okay, seems okay. There is one question. Okay, so from Carla. Can you give us an estimation for the upgrade in projects already using layouts? Yeah, okay, that's a good question. When we tag it, there will, of course, as always, will be upgrade instructions. In all, there are no big breaking changes. So for example, the change layout type doesn't break anything. The UX improvements also don't break anything. The new condition types don't break anything. The possibility for breaking some things or that might need some changes is with the new way of how we handle collections. So we will have a conversion script that converts the collections, the old collections or from the previous versions to the new way. So there will be a script for existing projects like that. The most importantly, there might be some changes in, for example, for integration work. So if you have integrated some custom queries, there might be something or some changes needed there, but overall, I don't think it's a big thing. So I can check with my colleagues to give you some better estimation, but I don't think it's a big deal. Any other questions? Okay, seems that everybody understood everything, which is great. Okay, I think we are already 40 minutes, so already more than I planned, but I think I also explained everything that I wanted. So ping me or contact me on other channels if you need some more insights. Okay, thanks for joining, and this of course will be recorded and shared later on. So thanks everybody and have a nice day. Cheers.